Hello and welcome back to Bicyclelegs and another edition of Anniversary Albums. Today we're going to be looking at albums that are having a significant anniversary in the month of March 2023. So again, for those who are new to this series, when I say a significant anniversary, I'm talking about one that ends in a 5 or a 0. So 50th, 40th, 25th, that sort of thing. This was an incredibly difficult month to pick, even more so than usual. And in fact, I've taken the creative decision to keep this list down to 10. I am leaving out a couple of albums that are having 50th anniversaries this month that are huge albums. Please let me know in the comments which ones they are, because they really are a couple of the biggest albums of all time. So let's get into the list that I have prepared. And the first album that we're going to have a look at is actually having its 55th anniversary in the month of March. It was originally released on the 1st of March 1968. It's the debut album by The Nice, and that is The Thoughts of Emilist Davjak. Now, it could be argued that this is where progressive rock really started. I would probably say it was the second Nice album that was definitely more in the realm of progressive rock. This is more still sort of firmly rooted in psychedelia, I think, except for the rondo. The rondo is definitely a pointer of where prog rock would go. But this is a fabulous album. This is the first major work by the late great Keith Emerson, along with Lee Jackson, David O. List and Brian Davidson. This is the only album that David O. List would appear on in its entirety. There would be little bits of him on the second album, but he was gone well before that album came out. But you've got wonderful things here like Flower King of Flies, the opening track. The title track is wonderful. Bonnie K, Rondo, incredible reworking of Dave Brubeck's Blue Rondo a la Turk. War and Peace, Tantalizing Maggie Dawn, one of the creepiest songs I think I have in my entire collection, all really whispered, really got that sort of an ASMR quality to the vocal, but a real creepiness to it as well. And then The Cry of Eugene to finish it off, really beautiful song. Great album, wonderful start for this band. I do have a studio albums ranked on the Nice, well, studio albums ranked, because a lot of their albums mixed studio and live stuff. I'll leave a link in the description. Please do go and give that a look if you haven't already. The next album we're going to be looking at is having a 50th anniversary. We've still got like 3 albums or 4 albums that are having 50th anniversaries this month. No, 3. This one was released on the 2nd of March 1973. I think it's one of the greatest works this guy ever did, and that is A Wizard, a True Star by Todd Rundgren. I mean, just wonderful weirdness on this album. I mean, look at the die cut inner sleeve. I don't have the die cut outer sleeve, but, you know, and it's like 55 minutes long and it's on a single disc. You know, the international feel is sort of like this big, long, side-long epic with a whole bunch of tracks in it. Sometimes you don't know what to feel. Hungry for Love. This one's a lot more psychedelic and out there than the previous album, which was sort of like Todd's breakthrough. But it's just an incredible album. Well recommended. Todd Rundgren recently, last year, quite rightly, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not just for his solo work, but for all the various different productions he's done for so many artists over the years. Incredible producer as well as an incredible music artist in his own right. The next album we're going to have a look at is also having its 55th anniversary in the month of March. It was released on the 4th of March 1968. It is my favourite album by Frank Zappa and the Mothers, and that is We're Only In It For The Money. I did a top 10 favourite Frank Zappa albums as well. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. Well worth checking out. There's a great sort of variation of different kinds of Frank Zappa on that album. But I mean, you've got, Who Needs the Peace Corps on this, and What's the Ugliest Part of Your Body, and Take Your Clothes Off When You Dance, and, Harry, You're a Beast, Absolutely Free. I mean, that was the title of his previous album, but there's a song on here called Absolutely Free, and it's one of the finest things he ever did. Let's Make the Water Turn Black is just wonderful weirdness. And then it ends with the wonderful sort of sound collage of the chrome-plated Megaphone of Destiny, which kind of is a callback to Lumpy Gravy, which came out around about the same time. I mean, on the back of this, Frank is saying, is this phase one of Lumpy Gravy? And then on Lumpy Gravy, there's a quote saying, is this phase two of We're Only In It For The Money? So they're very much thematically linked. There's a great show on Grant's Rock Warehouse about these two albums, Lumpy Gravy and We're Only In It For The Money. Go and check it out. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 40th anniversary in the month of March. It was originally released on the 4th of March, 1983. It originally was a very overlooked album by this band, but it's now come to receive the critical success that I think it deserves, and that is Dazzle Ships by Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. This is with the die-cut sleeve, so that's really funky. I mean, you've got songs like Genetic Engineering and Telegraph, which were both singles that didn't do very well for them, unfortunately, because I think they're both really great songs. You've got Dazzle Ships Parts 2, 3, and 7, The Romance of the Telescope, Silent Running, There's a lot of great stuff on here, and, sort of interspersed with, again, sort of bits of Music Concrete with, sort of like recordings of overseas, like Eastern Bloc as it was at the time, radio stations. Fascinating album. A really, really sort of experimental album coming off Architecture and Morality. And after this, I think they would feel a little chastened and they would go to a much more commercial sound after that. Still producing some good albums though, I think. The next album's another debut. It's also having its 40th anniversary in the month of March. It was released on the 7th of March 1983, and that is The Hurting by Tears for Fears. This is where it all began with Tears for Fears. For me, Tears for Fears began when I saw the film clip for Mad World, which is on this album. I've been a fan ever since. The title track, The Hurting, is great. Pale Shelter's a wonderful song. Memories Fade. Just heart-wrenching stuff. Suffer the Children is wonderful. Watch Me Bleed. Change, another really, really good single. The Prisoner is probably the most experimental piece on the album. People thought this was just synth-pop. It was much more substantial. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with just synth-pop. I love synth-pop. But this is much more than that. It's definitely a very substantial, very creative album, this one. And Start of the Breakdown finishes the album. It's just an incredible debut. They would only get better from here too, which is, just incredible because this is such a great start. Speaking of albums that were also great starts for what turned out to be wonderful careers, the next album is also celebrating its 40th anniversary in the month of March. It was released on the 14th of March 1983, and that is Script for a Jester's Tear by Marillion. I didn't get into Marillion until a little after this. I think the first Marillion album I actually heard was Fugazi, and then even then that one didn't click with me straight away. It took quite a while later before Marillion really clicked for me. But boy, when it did, this is one of my favourite artists ever. And I'm a big fan of the Steve Hogarth era as well as the Fish era. I will definitely do a more in-depth Marillion episode at some stage. I don't know whether I'll do the whole catalogue or whether I'll just do a top 10, but It's definitely a band I want to talk about more on this channel because they're a band I adore. I recently did an appearance on Peter Kerr's Rock Daydream Nation where we talked about our favourite concept albums, and I picked Brave for that as one of my two choices. But this album, again, great way to start a career. You know, Script for a Jester's Tear, the title track, wonderful, really dramatic and yeah, it's just great. And then He Knows You Know, which is wonderful. It was a single. The Web, it's one of their sort of great mini epics. Garden Party with another single actually did quite well for them on the charts. I think it went top 20 in the UK. Chelsea Monday is still a classic, I think, of theirs. And then Forgotten Sons, probably the most dramatic track on the whole album. Just a wonderful album, top to bottom. Not my favourite Marillion album, but it's a great, great album. No two ways about it. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 45th anniversary in the month of March. It was originally released on the 17th of March 1978. It is the second album by this artist, Elvis Costello, and it is this year's model, and this is my favourite Elvis Costello album. No two ways about it. You know, it's just weird insert as well with the strange and tiny little TV on the back. But you know, I mean, this has got Pump It Up on it. It's got, you know, I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea, Lip Service, you know, I mean, so many great songs. No Action is the opening track. This Year's Girl. My version has Watching the Detectives on it. I think a lot of the original copies of his debut had Watching the Detectives tacked onto it. This one has it tacked on here. Just my favourite Elvis Costello album because it's just so strong start to finish, and it's just that really wonderful sort of post-punk feel that it has to it, with Steve Naive's whirling, whizzing keyboards, all that. Now the next album is another debut album and another just harbinger of things to come for this band. This is probably the oldest album I've ever done on one of these Studio Albums Rank shows because it's having its 60th anniversary in the month of March. It was originally released on the 22nd of March 1963, and that is Please Please Me by the Beatles. Now you have to excuse me keeping this one in the plastic because this is a really, really, really old copy and the cover is kind of falling apart, and so I don't want to do it any more damage if I can avoid it. But I do also have this strange Taiwanese bootleg version of it, which I think is rather nifty. Just what an incredible album start to finish again. I mean, the Beatles would definitely go on to bigger and better things, but this is such a good album to start a career with. I saw her standing there. What a statement of intent, just out of the blocks. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then straight into it. Misery is a great song. The cover of Anna, Go to Him, is great. You know, you've got the singles Please Please Me and Love Me Do on here, as well as the B-sides Ask Me Why and P.S. I Love You. Their wonderful version of Baby It's You, which was co-written by the late great Burt Bacharach. Do You Want to Know a Secret is gorgeous. Their version of A Taste of Honey is great. There's a Place, and then they finish it off with their just like incendiary cover of Twist and Shout. What an incredible album. And as I say, they would just go on to bigger and better things from there. Now the last two albums are both having 50th anniversaries in the month of March. And they were both released on the 23rd of March 1973, and they were both released by the same record company, and they were bands that were both with the same management company. So the first one we're going to have a look at is the second album by Roxy Music, For Your Pleasure. My favourite Roxy Music album. It's got Do the Strand, which, you know, probably the best album opener they ever had. You know, the side one, again, I think I described this in my Roxy Music Studio Albums Ranked, which I'll leave a link in the description for. You know, the side one is sort of the more accessible tracks. You know, even though it ends with In Every Dream Home a Heartache, which is just like a weird, you know, love song to a blow-up doll. And then side two, you get this weird sort of krautrocky, art rocky kind of tracks. There's 3 tracks, 2 of them are longish for Roxy Music, sort of in the 9-10 minute mark. The Bogus Man, Grey Lagoons, and the title track For Your Pleasure. It's my favourite Roxy Music album, and yeah, just great stuff. But there's no such thing as a bad Roxy Music album. All really, really good stuff. And as I say, also released 23rd of March 1973, celebrating its 50th anniversary, is Lark's Tongues in Aspic by King Crimson. This was the debut of the Cross Fripp Wetton Bruford Muir lineup. Unfortunately, Jamie Muir would only last this one album before he would leave. But again, start to finish, wonderful album, although maybe doesn't quite capture the explosiveness of the band in concert. These are still 6 great tracks. I mean, you've got Lark's Tongues in Aspic Part 1, the beautiful Fragile Book of Saturday, the gorgeous Exiles, which I think is one track that sort of harkens back to earlier King Crimson, whereas the rest of this is very much a moving forward into the sort of new unknown horizons for the band. This is the sort of one throwback to sort of, you know, In the Court or In the Wake of Poseidon sort of sounding King Crimson. Easy Money, wonderful song, talking drum, and then Lark's Tongues in Aspic Part 2, just ferocious instrumental. Again, I've done a King Crimson Studio Albums Ranked. It's probably the most popular video on my channel. I will leave a link for that in the description so that you can have a look at it. So as you can see, there are a couple of probably really standout albums that I didn't include. Please let me know in the comments which ones you think I should have included. Tell me which ones of these you do like, which ones you don't like. I always love it when you tell me the ones that I didn't include, because sometimes they were ones that were on my longer list and I just chose not to include them for whatever reason. And sometimes you guys come up with albums that I didn't think of, and I kick myself for not even thinking of them when preparing these lists. So please do leave a comment in the description. I love to read them, and I always try to give them a little love heart and a thumbs up. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really, really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I've done a ton of Studio Albums Ranked videos. There's a playlist for those. Everything's playlisted. If you want to look at some of my earlier anniversary album shows, there's a playlist for that. If you want to watch my Bicyclelegs Discovers Rush series, there's a playlist for that, and so on and so on. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter, and I now have a dedicated Bicyclelegs Facebook page. There are links to all of those in the description. Please, especially with the Facebook page, come and give that a like. That's where I'm going to do most of my channel updates and that sort of thing. So I'd really love you to come over there and join the discussion. Really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.